Go. And welcome everyone to the Sports Writers. We got an extra sports writer with us here again this week. Jeff Newhall has joined us, athletic director and girls basketball coach at St. Mary's High School. So we have Phil
and former reporter. Don't forget that.
There you go.
I got you, Jeff.
Thanks, Phil.
Nick Giannino, Matt Williams, Nick Kukuru here, and there's put a little smile on his face for winning the state title. Jeff, congratulations to you and the team on the win Saturday against Bishop Fenwick. So I know you've talked at end, I'm sure, about the game, but just to give these guys and our listeners just an overview as how you look at it now, almost 48 hours after the event.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, Fenwick deserves a lot of credit. I think it was well documented, specifically in your newspaper, that we were probably a heavy favorite going into the game. And, sometimes, and we're seeing this in the NCAA tournament, sometimes that added pressure is really not what you really need at this time of the year. But, I thought Fenwick did a lot of things very well and got themselves in a position where they could have won the game. But I thought in the fourth quarter, we kind of pulled it together when we had to and made some big plays down the stretch. So, in 5 years, in 5 days, no one's going to really remember the score. They remember if you won the state championship or not, and they deserve a lot of credit for what they did. But Saturday was certainly a challenging day.
Yeah. Jeff, where you won so many games this year by large margins and you had blown through all the tournament competition, what did you say prior to that fourth quarter starting when it was it a 2-point game going into the fourth quarter, if I'm remembering that right? So what did you say to your girls to get them through that last 8 minutes, persevere, and play the way that they had all season? Like I said, simply because you didn't have a lot of close games. So they really showed their championship medal there in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, you're right. We played a lot of good teams. We had some good games. I don't think we had any scores that were real. I mean, we beat Fian once by 7, I think, but it wasn't with what was on the line the other day. But the big thing for us in between the third and the fourth quarter, I basically said, you guys are playing tight. You're not even having fun. You're 8 minutes away from winning a state championship, and we're in like panic mode. We haven't been panicking in 3 years here, or 4 years for some of them. I'm like, just go have fun and relax. Good things will happen. You're short-arming everything. You're worried about the shots not going in. You're worried about the officiating. You're worried about all the things that you really can't control. Well, play the game at the pace that we've been playing the whole year and have fun. And, Naya came out right in the first minute, I think, of the fourth quarter and went right to the hoop on a side out-of-bounds play. And then the next possession, she hit a 3. So we went right back up 7, which still wasn't all that comfortable, but obviously much better than 2.
Not just the games this year. I mean, the Woburn game, obviously a great game, and that's a Division I, I think, Final Four team, if I'm not mistaken. But, last year, the state final came down to the last possession, right? So you had a lot of kids on the floor that maybe in the back of their minds could draw on that experience. I mean, they've been through a lot of tight pressure basketball, and not just this year, but in their careers.
Yeah, there's no question that they playing in those types of games and in those arenas has certainly helped us. And, having a point guard like Yersi Quilise is just, from a coaching standpoint, I never really thought like we were in, even though the score was tightening, because of what you just alluded to, Matt, seniors, older kids that have been in these games, I just kind of felt like we were going to get over the hump. It was pretty clear it wasn't going to be pretty. But yeah, they've played in a lot of big games, and, not to sound like a jerk, but we've played at the Songas quite a bit. We're very grateful. We've never lost a game there, but we have never played extremely well there. So I guess I'll take the good with the bad, but they seem to be low scoring games, defensive games. And I think a lot of it has to do with the pressure and the nerves, but also the size of the floor, the lights, the big venue, and that type of stuff. So, long story short, to answer your question, you're 100% right. We've played in a lot of big games. We've played in state championship games. And when you're in a state championship game, a 1 or 2 possession game late, that certainly is a huge factor.
I think Nick, really described it pretty well. Was just the way that Yersi handled the ball, right? And in a pressure situation like that, to not have to worry about a turnover, right? Because those are the things that can kind of change the game. I mean, I think a lot of people that have seen you play the last couple of years, come away so impressed with Naya. She's done such a good job scoring the ball. But tell us a little bit about Yersi too, because she's obviously a tremendous player that does some of that ball handling and little things that obviously she scores a ton as well, but maybe, you have to be a little bit more of an appreciator of the game to appreciate what Yursi does a little bit. I mean, did you feel like her confidence handling that ball and just running the floor was a big part in not having that kind of, holy moly turnover that could have swung momentum?
Yeah, she's one of these players, and I tell our coaching staff this all the time. We're not going to really know what she was until we don't have her. It's basically happening from now on. But just the stuff that you just talked about. I mean, there's no 5 count if you're dribbling the ball any longer. This is a new rule. It's only been 2 years. So, the other day there's like 1:37 to go, right? And she just turned her back to the basket at half court and dribbled the ball for 30 seconds. Then we got called for a moving screen. But still, 4 years ago, you would have had to go into 4 corners and try to pass the ball, and that gets very, very dangerous. But if you have a player like her, you just have her dribble the ball for 30 straight seconds and run something. And not everybody has that luxury. But, she had a couple of big steals. Some of her best games of the year were in the tournament. So I told her the other day, I said, if you were just going to coast through the regular season and then turn around, I wish you would have told me that. It might have made blood pressure down a little bit. But the other thing I would say about her is she's probably the most unselfish kid that we've ever had here. She scored 240 points less this year than she did a year ago.
Right.
Specifically because she wanted to get her 2 classmates, her 2 friends, Nia Morgan and Kellen Pereira. She wanted to get them 1,000 points. So she became a much more pass first point guard than she had been in the past. But again, not a lot of people would do that. So she deserves the credit for a lot of the things that, like you said, Matt, you might not read about in the paper, but when you watch her play in the game, you understand it.
Yeah, certainly this year. I mean, I know, and that's a great point you make about wanting to help out her friends, because I had noticed, like, wow, she used to score a lot more, and that's just such an unselfish thing, a conscious thing, and kudos to her. That's great.
Jeff, I know in addition to being the architect of now the 3-time defending state champ, you also preside over the entire athletic department. And what a winter the school had. I mean, I don't know the stats on this, but I really wonder, was there another school in the Commonwealth that had 3 teams playing in state finals this past weekend like you did? Can you talk about the boys basketball and the girls hockey team in the winter that they had?
Yeah, no, we were the only school that had that amount of teams left. And the boys hockey team had a great season too. They're a very young team. I got into the tournament. We won our first round game in the final 16, lost to a very, very good Catholic Memorial team, which I'm sure you had seen play a couple times, I'm sure.
With an excellent freshman goaltender that
Yes.
you have. I mean, the future's very bright there.
Yeah. And then, we've just had, we have we have some really good coaches, but the kids have been so great across the board. And I think on the boys basketball team, they're coming off of a state championship a year ago. And a lot of the names that you saw on the roster Saturday were probably names you saw at Gillette Stadium in December, because a lot of them were on the Super Bowl winning team. It's just a great group of kids. And there's a lot of seniors on that team. And, they had a great 4 years here in both sports, but just another tremendous run. I think theirs was a little bit, maybe on the outside, not as much, but on the inside, we were questioning how deep they could go, and geez, they got all the way to the final again with a chance to win. And then on the girls hockey, which has just been, one of the premier programs in the state for 20 years, finally got back to I say they hadn't been there in 10 years, which I wasn't paying attention, but Frank kept telling me that like once a week. And they just, again, great senior class. Jenna Chaplin is just one of the best players we've ever had here, and we've had some good ones. But I think it's we're a little bit spoiled because we've had a great run of success across many sports, and I don't think the kids really understand how difficult it is to get to a state championship game. And obviously, the weekend for the girls basketball team was awesome. Don't get me wrong, but the other 2 teams coming up short was it was a little bit of there were some sad people here today in the building, but I think as time goes on, they'll realize just how special this group is across the board and how special those teams were.
Yeah, I think Coach Brown, the boys basketball coach, mentioned that been a very special, a lot of success, whether it be in football and basketball over the last few years and so on for St. Mary's. I'm just going to wrap it up, Jeff, with one off the wall question here for you for the girls basketball team. Don't get asked this much after these big games, but who's the funniest player on your team? Who's the
Sure.
team? Who's the player that bothers you the most during the regular season, or has the best sense of humor?
Probably Kellen. She's got a good sense of humor. She's in left field, the ball's in the right field corner most of the time. So, but it really, she performs, obviously. She's a very good player, but she keeps everybody loose and lightens the mood, sometimes on purpose, but sometimes just with her comments. So, there's a lot of things that we'll miss about the three seniors, from a coaching standpoint, they're losing about 3,700 points. So that's a problem. But from a personality standpoint, she's just easygoing and she is kind of funny.
Got to make up 3,700 points. That's a big task, man. Doesn't get any easier. Guys, anything else for Coach Newhall here?
Well, Jeff, I just wanted to ask you about the conference as a whole. Obviously, as an athletic director, you deal a lot with the other programs within the conference. And this winter, they had a lot of success too. You had Archbishop Williams on both sides, I think, make the Final Four. You had Cardinal Spellman make a good run. Just that, togetherness within the conference and having those schools being able to represent the conference deep into the tournament. I mean, you can't say that about a lot of conferences in the state. So, I mean, what's it like playing in there and dealing with all those other coaches and athletic directors?
Yeah, I mean, we have our league, once we expanded to bring Bishop Fian and Bishop Stang in, it got us back to 8 teams, which I think is a very solid group of teams. But the quality of the programs that those two schools, plus the ones that we already had, have really brought us to another level. And on the girls' basketball side, you had 2 state champions and 2 state finalists out of 8 teams. I mean, that says a lot. And you had already said something about the boys' side as well. And we also did something this year that I really do think that a lot of leagues should look at. And we probably didn't need to this year because of the strength, but on the basketball side, we played everybody once as a league, and then you could play other teams a second time as a non-league game. It gave us more freedom to go out and schedule tougher teams, and I think that's part of the reason why a lot of us were around for so long in the tournament, because our power rankings were all very high. Like take our boys hoop team for a second, just as an example. They lost 7 games. But non-league, David played, Lynn English, Malden Catholic, Worcester North, Brockton, St. John. I mean, the best teams you can possibly play. So even at 15-7, they were seeded number 2, which is a significant thing because in the new tournament format, you're at home for the first 3 games. And so I think a lot of our teams took advantage of that, got themselves the highest possible rating they could. And then you saw how the tournament played itself out. But it's a very strong league, great group of schools, athletic directors, and I'm not surprised at the success.
Actually, let me ask you one last thing on the seeding process, the power rankings. As a coach, is there anything you would like to see changed? And as an AD and coach, what do you applaud the power rankings on? So what they've accomplished so far?
Well, I think if you look across most sports, the teams that are there in the end or that end up winning are usually some of the higher seeded teams. There's a few outliers, but there's not many. There's definitely some things in the system that need to be looked at and addressed. Even as a top seed, to me, to a certain degree, you get to the final 8. I'm not sure you should be playing in your home gym. I mean, that was the old sectional final. I get the first round, maybe the second round, but I just think, and we've been on the right side of that, so I'm fine with it as the one. But I also understand if you're the 8th best team in the state, you're in the final 8 in the state. You have to go play in someone else's gym.
Right.
It just doesn't, that's one thing. I know people want to talk about the margin of victory, and it's 10 points in basketball, and I understand the issues with it, but I also understand that any power rating index has to have some type of margin of victory, either none at all, which means you run up the score as high as you can to get more points, or you cap it, which is what we did. But I know it's a hot topic, but I think kind of the home field advantage is something we should probably look at.
Good stuff. Jeff, thanks so much for taking some time to join us. Congratulations. I think you got a busy day here for you, but thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care. Jeff Newhall, the athletic director, girls basketball coach, and state champion from oh my gosh, from St. Mary's High School.
Oh, yeah, you'll be in trouble.
That was the worst slip up ever. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh, They beat Bishop Fenwick.
I actually saw Adam DeBadgis, Fenwick girls basketball coach, on Saturday after the game, and I said to him, geez, hey, sorry, it sounds like you guys played great, and Nick could probably clue you in more on the actual game itself, but goes without saying he was very, very proud of his girls, the effort they put in. With only 2 graduating seniors, I think that the future is very, very bright. Especially with some of the younger players coming back to join the likes of Cecilia Kay and Tess Keenan, some of the veterans on the team. So, certainly not the effort. As I'm sure Jeff does, Adam expects a lot from his players, expects them to play hard, and they gave them everything they had on Saturday up in Lowell. So a great showing by the Crusaders.
No, you're right. It's it's one of those post games. I talking to Coach DeBadgis, I know he's disappointed they didn't win because they got close, lost by 4 points. But on the other hand, I'm pretty sure he didn't think, that. I'm thinking that he knew he was a big underdog because they'd lost to him twice by significant margins, and knew that everything had to break their way in order to get the W. And they did a lot of good things, but they needed everything to break their way. What's that?
Weren't they down like 15 points early?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was 30-15, something like that, right before the half, and then they got on the board.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
But yeah, Bill and I were both there. It was fantastic performance by Bishop Fenwick. I don't think I saw that one coming, especially after seeing them against Norwell in the Final Four there. They didn't play. It was kind of a sloppy game. They hung on late for a 2-point win, and against a good Norwell team, don't get me wrong, but just didn't seem like they had played their best basketball. And then they come out, and St. Mary's built that big lead. You said, oh, they've already lost to this team by close to 30 points twice this season, and it looked like it was going to go that way again. But that third quarter, man, they held them to St. Mary's to just 2 points. Their defense was all over the place. We mentioned Cecilia Kay on this podcast plenty of times. She was dominant as usual. I think she had 23 points, Bill. Kind of controlled the glass, had a couple big blocks. So
Caitlin Boyle, the freshman, had a real good game too, didn't she?
Who's that?
Caitlin Boyle had a really nice game too.
Caitlin Boyle played very well, yeah.
Freshman,
and I really like Celia Nielsen's game as well. She's only a freshman. She's got some height,
other freshman,
handle the ball. So, like you said, the future's bright. They were right there. That was an impressive second half to get back into it, and they just played with so much fire and so much energy.
Yeah, they were down 30-18 at the half, but as you mentioned, Nick, just before that, they were down 30-15. At the end of the first quarter, they were down 16-8. So they got almost like a 2-1 scoring margin there for parts of that first half. That's the feel you had. And then they allowed them only 2 points in the third quarter, as we talked about. And that score was 32-30 at the end of 3. St. Mary's still in the lead. So there you go. Well, let's jump to some other things, gentlemen. Anything else? Any other tournament, notes that you guys want to share? Watching some of these games or watching the scores come in?
I'll just jump into the boys hoop. We had, our 2 teams that made kind of the deeper runs, Beverly in Division I boys hoop and Marblehead in Division II. Marblehead lost to Mansfield, who made it to the state championship before losing to Malden Catholic. And then Beverly, gave a good fight to Worcester North, who ended up winning in Division I against Needham. So, some good seasons for our local teams. There was a lot of really good boys basketball teams in the state. It was a great tournament to cover. I was able to stream some of those other games later in the tournament that, we didn't get out and cover for our local teams. But yeah, another really successful boys hoop tournament, I think. And I'm sure these guys can speak on the other sports, but I really enjoyed it. And yeah, just a great run. And for that Worcester North team, first public school from Worcester to win a state title on the boys basketball front. So that's pretty remarkable. And I guess they had about 5,000 fans there for that Division I final yesterday, I heard. And I don't know how many people the Songus holds, probably close to 8,000. So it was pretty packed for that Division I final.
I wonder if that's any consolation to Beverly. You know, you sit there and you lost to the eventual state champion. I
Right.
remember when we had Matt on, he was kind of like, well, it's unfortunate we've drawn probably the best team in the state, you know, at this stage. He didn't come right out and say that, but reading between the lines, you could tell he kind of felt that way and was obviously proven right.
And that's where the ranking was inaccurate. You know, we talk about it, the good things about the new ranking system, the statewide, and also the negatives. And Worcester North was seeded number 6. Would have been top 3, probably top 1. You know, they won the
Yeah,
whole thing.
yeah.
So
That's the thing about the basketball, though. The boys, especially, I feel like there's so many teams. You could have probably
Yeah.
taken the top 5 and shuffled them in any order, and you know whoever played better that day was going to win. I mean, that's in my opinion. You know, from following this for 2 years, that's got to be the deepest field is the D1 boys basketball out of all the sports in all 3 seasons. I think.
yeah, I would agree. And you look at a team like Beverly, they're probably somewhere between 10 and 12 top teams in the state this year. And they got bounced in the Sweet 16 because of that draw, you know, just an unfortunate draw against a number 6 Worcester North. If they had faced a team on the other side of that top 8, probably find themselves in an Elite 8. So another great season for them.
But I think you have to look at the power rankings as at the end of the day, the last 2 teams or the final 4 are those the best 4 teams. You know what I'm saying? And you know they're not always going to have the 1, 2, 3, 4 power rankings for sure. Right. The final 4 that will be the case. But I think in the most part, like Matt was saying, I mean that D1 field is pretty deep, and so I don't know if you can fault those power rankings too much on the seeding so much. I mean because you like Jeff was saying earlier, like who knows how North played a tough schedule, but when you're a very good Division I team, you are the tough opponent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
On
sports,
your schedule,
right? I mean, you want, hey, the 98 Vikings didn't make the Super Bowl. You know, they'd be number 1 in the power rankings. So, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Like that unpredictability is part of why everybody watches the show and watches the games, right? So you want some of that.
Yeah.
Nick Kukuru, what do you think?
I think one issue that I've seen, I feel like if your conference has a down year, you're kind of behind the 8 ball. You're not going to get the seed you probably deserve. I know Manchester Essex boys. I think they probably should have went a little further this year. But you look, they go 15-5 in the Cal as a Cal small team last year, and 17-3 as a Cal small team this year, and they're ranked 12th and 9th. So I think that was kind of a bit of a tough break there, and it was no fault of their own. It's because the Cal large especially was down the last 2 years. So those wins didn't carry the weight that they usually do, and unfortunately there was nothing they could do about it if the conference is down. I think we saw a little bit of that, different sport, NEC baseball a bit last year too. We saw a couple of, the whole conference kind of struggled to get its footing in those rankings because a couple of tough out of conference results.
Yep.
I mean, who would think that it would be more advantageous, like Jeff was saying, in their league, to only schedule opponents once and go out of league so much? Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was a great point by Jeff. I'd love to see that explored a little bit in the NEC. I know the principals hate it, but I think if you want to win state championships, that's the way to go. And that gives teams that are rebuilding the opportunity to schedule like teams, and the teams that are really powerful the opportunity to schedule difficult teams. And like you say, you can always play each other twice, right? Like there's no law against that. One of them just doesn't go in the league standings. I thought that was a really good point by Jeff, and would like to see it in the NEC, to be honest.
How much of that though has to do with like travel and or budgetary restrictions, Willie? I mean, it's a lot easier not only to schedule multiple league games against similar opponents in your league, but maybe the travel factor or the cost of a bus, prohibits that at some schools.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think, certainly, I mean, I don't want to I'm trying to think of examples of schools without calling out anybody, because I don't know that anybody's been told this. I mean, but you could find a game, if you could say well, don't play Zavarian on the road, right? You could play Andover, You could play North Andover. Like those aren't any further from some of our schools than they are from each other, right? So I mean, if you're truly serious about your competition, I think there's ways to do it while keeping the distance down. I mean, you don't have to be like St. John's Prep and go out to St. John Shrewsbury and Pope Francis. You know, you can do it in the MVC and in the Middlesex League, which is a great league too. I mean, you can go play Wakefield, you know, Stoneham or somebody like this that might be up in a given sport. I mean, I think there's ways to do it while mitigating the travel. I think it's a lot easier to say, well, I only got to find 4 games. This is awesome. That's a lot less work. You know, is that the
Certainly,
best
yeah.
thing for your team? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, and that's the balancing act that these guys have. But
how many guys are, I shouldn't say guys, how many coaches are doing the Matt Karakutis thing where he knows he's going to have a good team. He wants to have his team tested. So he's willing to go out and get those home and homes with Catholic Memorial, or he'll play a Central Catholic and schools like that. I mean, I just don't see that we have a lot of programs in that position where they feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, our baseball teams used to. I know. I mean, Tony Palmieri, for instance, she goes and gets Amesbury twice. She only has 2 dates. I'm sure she'd love to play, you know, to have 10 open dates if that was the opportunity. And I'm sure she'd still play Danvers twice and Beverly twice and Gloucester twice and maybe Marblehead, because those are great teams, right? I mean, you know, TJ Burrill has got a great reputation for playing teams like that. He still plays St. Mary's, but he's only got, 4 dates. So I think, the girls' soccer off the top of my head, you know, Jimmy and when Dennis was coaching, certainly all played very difficult teams. Your Acton Boxboroughs, your Andovers. So, you know, I think it's up to the coach in question. Again, I think it's less work, but it might be for the best. And you know, in the old days, right? If you were a borderline 500 team, you'd go try to find winnable games, right? So that you could get to that 500 and get in the tournament. But that's not as advantageous anymore. Maybe that's a reason that they don't want as many open dates, because for the teams that aren't strong, there's no incentive for them to chase that 500 record, right? Because they can get in at 5-15 or whatever it is.
You know, I had an odd thought here. So remember a few years ago when the Greater Boston League teams came in to the Northeastern Conference. So you had Malden, Medford, Revere was already in, but you had Everett. So now I'm thinking, remember, and Everett played every sport except for football. So now with these power rankings, think about this. It would have made more sense back in the old day if they had that rating system to have Everett played the Northeastern Conference in football every week, because you know what I'm saying?
Everett.
Oh,
right?
not for Everett necessarily.
Yeah, they would have
their
ranking would have gone down. So,
but the Northeast Conference football power ranking would go out through the roof, right?
Yeah, I mean, you'd almost need to play them to offset what you lose by playing the others in some ways.
Maybe just unusual.
No, it's interesting. That is really interesting. I surmise perhaps that the power rankings being on the horizon might be one of the reasons that whole thing didn't last as longer. You know, if that makes sense to you guys.
Brooks, what do you think about all this?
What's that?
What do you think about all this?
I mean, what, the rankings wise?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of like going out and finding better teams. I mean, I can remember a generation plus ago, you know, Dana Knowlton going out and trying to get, the best games he could for his Gloucester hockey team. But again, far and few between.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Willie said, the teams that can do it kind of do it now. But I don't think I would be against going that route with the one game as far as the NEC is concerned. I think the Cal's a different animal because the lines are a little more clearly drawn in the Cal than they are in the NEC. And a lot of the time that helps the lower teams to play those games up, and it doesn't hurt the larger teams that much on the average year. But in the NEC, I get it. It's kind of the haves and have-nots in the NEC in a lot of sports, and I do think it would
more so than ever. I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
Well, what's funny too is every sport seems to be, that's what makes it so hard to have definitive divisions, because I think there's certain sports where a team might be a have in this game and a have not in this other game. So you don't want to necessarily have them on one side or the other for every single thing, and they like to do that for consistency, and sometimes it ends up hurting the sports because, for whatever reason, a town might be really good at, lacrosse and not so hot at baseball or softball type of thing.
Mhm. It's true. It's those middling schools. Like I think you have
Yes,
your
yes.
larger schools, Masco, Beverly. They always should be. Peabody. They should always be in the Dunn division. And, your Winthrops and your Sauguses should probably always be in the Lynch division. But I think a lot of those other schools, it depends on the sport. I know speaking from a Gloucester perspective, it does them no good being in the Lynch in some sports. In some sports, they have to be in there. They wouldn't
Right.
compete in the Dunn
Yeah.
division.
Well, they're
look at
reactive.
Winthrop. Winthrop was the best hockey team for
Yeah.
boys in the conference this year,
Mhm.
and for girls, Willie, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But
I mean,
size-wise, you'd say they belong in the Lynch. And using
Yeah.
Beverly as an example, like Beverly football or Beverly hockey had sub 500 years. I think both teams only won 3 games. So while size-wise they might belong in the Dunn, I mean, ability-wise they belonged in the Lynch. So
I think the big problem is they're reactive rather than proactive too. I mean, football
Yeah.
is a great example. Look at Peabody football, right? Like they got put in the small because they had some terrible seasons, and then they have a great class come through, and they wreck the small, and now that class is going to graduate, so they're going to get moved up, and who knows if they'll do good or bad. I mean, Peabody's a bad example. They should always be in the up, but take like let's say Swampscott hockey has a great class, and they go through the bottom and do really well and then get moved up based on those previous years, but those kids are gone, right? Like, so that's and then the kids that come up afterwards end up getting punished because the kids before them were really good. Like, that's never great either.
But now that you talk about that part, Willie, is that now you might think there might be a groundswell of support among coaches. Like if I'm a Northeastern Conference hockey coach, I want to align it right for this coming year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
For
exactly.
just that point, for the power rankings and so on. You know what I'm saying? That it would
Yeah,
make
exactly. They don't want to do
wouldn't
it. I
that
mean,
make sense? Yeah.
well, the football is a perfect example. I mean, if Peabody's in the Lynch again next year, like, what are we doing? Like, why have we not changed that?
Well,
It just doesn't make sense. So they should be able to alter these things when it's that obvious.
yeah, that would be an obvious one for them to be in the top division size wise for sure. Yeah. Well, gentlemen,
we should touch base quickly on Endicott men's hockey before we go.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
Frozen Four this weekend, historic times over on 376 Hale Street in Beverly. Willie can talk much more about it than I can here, but great NCAA quarterfinal win over Norwich, shutout win on Saturday night before a packed barn, and they are hosting the national semifinals and finals this weekend on the bucolic Beverly campus. Open up against Hobart. You also have Adrian and the University of New England in the other semifinal playing Friday. Both semifinals are Friday. National title game is Sunday night. Willie, what do you think? You were there Saturday night.
I think Adrian's the defending champ. I did my homework.
Correct.
Right. So
Yep.
there you go, Willie. I teed it up for you.
Oh, tremendous. I mean, what a great take. Interestingly enough, 3 of the final 4 teams did not exist in the 90s, right? So these are new teams. Endicott certainly is only 8 years old, and to be in a final 4 and host it, I mean, that's wild. That is crazy. Obviously, number 1 Utica getting upset led to that opportunity there for the Gulls, and they're going to try to take full advantage of it. But what a fun team to watch. I mean, if people can't get into the rink, I mean, it's only going to hold 1,200 fans. I'm sure it's going to be sold out almost immediately. I would say, watch on the screen. It's a great brand of hockey. I mean, Division III is these kids are really, really, really good. I mean, there's some future pros on the ice. Like, don't knock D3 hockey or D3 anything for that matter. But
I think people sometimes don't realize, Willie, the speed and skill at Division III hockey.
Oh my God, they have no idea how good you have to be. That like the bunch of dudes at St. John's Prep that could never crack the Endicott team, like ever. Like you got to be so good to play D3 college hockey. Never mind D1. I mean, these are kids that all play juniors. Are all older. Like they're tremendously skilled players. They're fast. Endicott especially attacks with the width of the ice. And they're just such a simple team, and Coach RJ Tolan is just not I don't want to say he's not a master tactician in the sense that he's not like a smart guy or whatever, but he just is so laid back and he's such a player's coach. He just allows his players to do what they do. And you know, he doesn't tinker with things and he just kind of sits back and lets it work. I mean, you know, they outshot Norwich 15-2 in the third period. They're outscoring their opponents this year in the third period, 51-11. And you know, we asked him, we said, RJ, you know, what do you tell these guys before the third period? You know, how do they always turn it on before the third period? They're, you know, some magical adjustment you make, you tinker with your forecheck or you know, change your lines or whatever. And he just kind of shrugged. I loved it. It's one of the great quotes I've ever heard. He shrugged. He said, well, mostly I just tell them I believe in them and I think they're going to go do it. And that's it. I mean, he just enables his guys to play. And I think in hockey, especially, you know, in America, it's sometimes the creativity is choked out of the game. It's so regimented with the systems and the this and the that and the man high and, you know, all this kind of nonsense. And he just takes the creative reins off and just lets these guys play. And it just is, it's really refreshing. And you listen to him kind of talk about it and he doesn't give himself any credit for it, but you can just kind of tell that that's what he believes. And it just is, you know, again, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit refreshing. I hope that makes sense and kind of comes through. It felt a little rambling, but, you know, they're doing really great things over there. And
I know we're right up against it time-wise too, but it's remarkable that they've had the success they had doing something that I find in hockey is very hard to do and have a lot of success in that the goaltending job is basically a job share. I mean, it's essentially split right down the middle between the two sophomores. We have Atticus Kelly is playing half the games, and then Ryan Wilson is playing the other games. And they've been switching almost the entire season. Will they continue to do that in the national semifinals? I don't know. We're going to find out this week when we go to practice. But this is a great team, great story. As Willie said, if you can't get into the rink, make sure you check it out on the live stream. It's a wonderful brand of hockey, and we certainly, you know, wish Endicott nothing but the best as they go for their first national championship.
I know we're out of time, Phil. I know you teed this segment up by telling us the street address of the Bork Arena, 380 something Hale Street. What's the address of the McVan rink over in Peabody? Do you know?
Yeah, I do. That's 485 Lowell
Okay.
Street.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. You know why? Because I
Terrific.
put in these photo requests all the time from photographers, so I have to know the address.
Okay. And by the way, 3 years ago, I told Nick Giannino I believed in him, and look what happened. You know, it's the same deal.
point.
It's the same thing. Yeah. There
Wouldn't
you
be
go.
here without
well
you, Phil.
played, well played.
All right. On that note, we're out of here. Gentlemen, great job. Thank you.